Hey team, before we jump into today's episode, I want to start with something real. Now, we talk a lot about fitness, about getting stronger, losing fat, improving performance. But underneath all of that, the thing that keeps showing up in every client I've ever coached is confidence. Confidence to start, or confidence to keep going, and confidence to believe that they're capable of more than they think. I've seen women walk into the gym terrified to even pick up a dumbbell. And I've seen men who used to be athletes stare at themselves in the mirror, wondering where that spark went. And I've been there too. Because no matter how long you've been training, there will always be moments that test your self-belief. So, in this episode, we're not just talking about muscles. We're talking about what it means to rebuild trust in yourself, to believe in your ability to grow again, even when you've been knocked down before. And if you've ever looked in the mirror and thought, I'm not who I used to be, or maybe, I don't know if I can do this again, then this one is for you. So pop on those trainers and grab that cuppa, and we'll begin. All right, so let's talk about confidence. Confidence is one of those words that gets thrown around all the time. We say it like it's something you either have or you don't. But confidence isn't a personality trait. It's a process. And it's built brick by brick through evidence, not affirmation. It's not about walking into a room and feeling unstoppable. It's about showing up when you don't. And I want to talk about this today because I've been there, and I've been at the point where confidence felt like something other people had. Something that used to come naturally to me, but had somehow slipped through my fingers. Now, I've trained and competed all my life. I grew up around sport, around that feeling of pushing yourself, achieving, being part of a team, striving for excellence. That was my world, my identity. And then one day, it wasn't. And I had an injury that completely took me out of that world. It wasn't one of those a couple of weeks off and I'll bounce back type of injuries. It was serious. It was the kind that changes everything. Physically, mentally, emotionally. And suddenly the thing that had always been second nature, training, moving, competing, it was all impossible. And at first I tried to put on that brave face, the I'm fine, I'll get through it face that athletes are so good at. But behind that face, it felt like I was falling apart. And I remember looking down at my legs one day and realizing how different they were. One looked strong and powerful, the other smaller, weaker, almost like it didn't belong to me anymore. And that moment hit me hard, because it wasn't just my body that looked different. It was my identity. Everywhere I went, I felt it. Standing on the sidelines, watching my teammates train without me. Hearing about tournaments I couldn't go to. Seeing the photos and videos of people doing what I loved while I was sitting there on crutches and a physio schedule. It wasn't jealousy. It was grief. I was grieving for the version of myself that I didn't know how to get back to. And then there's that loss of independence. When you've always been the strong one, the capable one, and suddenly you need help just to make a cup of tea or get up the stairs. It hits your pride in ways you never expected. I couldn't even stand in the shower properly. I couldn't travel on my own. I needed help for everything. Things I'd never even thought about before. And you know what? That stripped me right back. And it forced me to look at who I was without the strength, without the medals, without the training schedule. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't like what I saw at first. Because when you lose the thing that makes you you, it's really hard not to start believing that maybe you're less without it. But at some point, and I can't tell you the exact day, something inside of me shifted. And it wasn't a big epiphany or a dramatic movie moment. It was just this quiet voice saying, no one else can do this for you. And that was it. I realised I was waiting for the confidence to come back before I acted. But that's not how it works, confidence. It doesn't lead the way. It follows you. So I started small, like really small. And one day I decided to walk a little further than the day before. Another day I left one crutch behind and told myself, just try. I'll only fall over. Just try it anyway. And that's the thing about trying. It's underrated. You don't have to feel confident to start. You have to start to become confident. And those first few steps, they weren't graceful. Far from it. There were wobbles, there were grimaces, and I'm pretty sure my puppy Badger thought I'd lost the plot a few times. But they were my steps. And they were the foundation of everything that came next. See, over time, those little steps became small wins. And those small wins started stacking up. And it's like your brain starts whispering, hey, you can still do this. And every time you take action, even something tiny, that whisper gets a little louder until one day it becomes the voice that says, I've got this. And that's what I call the confidence curve. It's that quiet rise that happens when you start proving to yourself that you can still move forwards. And it doesn't happen in one huge leap. It happens in micro moments of courage. Moments like dropping one crutch, doing one extra step, or walking into a gym again after months away. And if you've ever been in that place where your self-belief feels buried under frustration, fatigue, or fear, I promise you that curve is there waiting for you too. You just have to take that first step. And now, if I'm honest, rebuilding was the hardest thing I've ever done. Because progress after a setback doesn't come in a straight line. Some days you feel unstoppable, and other days you're right back where you started, wondering if all the effort's even worth it. And that was me for months. I'd have a good week of rehab and then a flare-up. I'd think, yes, it's finally working, and then suddenly the pain would spike again. It's exhausting, not just physically, but emotionally. Because when you've trained and competed all your life, you're used to your body doing what you tell it to. When it suddenly says no, that knocks you deeper than you expect. There were days where even standing felt like a chore. Days where exercise felt pointless. Tiny ankle raises, balance drills, endless mobility work. I remember sitting on the floor of my living room with resistance bands everywhere. My dog staring at me like, this doesn't look like training, Mum. And that's the thing about rehab. It's not glamorous. It's monotonous. And it's humbling. But those slow, frustrating, repetitive sessions taught me something that years of athletic training never had. And that discipline without ego is where real confidence starts. And then one day, about 18 months after the injury, I went into my physio session and we tried a 20-kilo squat. Now that doesn't sound like much, right? Especially for someone who's trained all their life. But for me, that barbell could have been a world record. I remember the weight settling across my shoulders and the slight tremble in my knees. The familiar burn as I lowered myself down, and when I stood back up, the look on my physio's face said it all. That single rep changed everything. And it wasn't about strength, it was about proof. Proof that I could still do hard things. Proof that my body hadn't given up on me, and neither had my mind. That was my "I'm coming back" moment. And from that point, something clicked, because confidence stopped being about medals, podiums, or PBs. It became about trust. Trusting my body to move again, trusting my mind to stay patient, and trusting myself to keep showing up, even on those bad days. And once you've rebuilt that kind of confidence, you see it everywhere. You see it in the person walking back into the gym after years away. You see it in the parent who finally puts themselves back on the priority list. You see it in the man who decides that being too old or too far gone is just a story he's been telling himself. I've coached many people through their own version of that 20-kilo squat moment. One client had been away from training for nearly a decade. She'd raised her kids, built her career, and suddenly looked up and realised she'd lost herself somewhere along the way. Her first goal? One proper push-up. It took weeks, and we worked on form, mobility, core strength. And the day she finally nailed that push-up, she cried. Not because of the movement, but because she'd proven to herself that she was still capable of growth. And another client came to me after a health scare, and he told me, "I just want to feel like me again." And I'll never forget the message he sent me after his first 5K run. "It was slow, but I did it, and I feel alive." That's the confidence curve for you. And it's not glamorous. It's not filtered. It's human. It's built in quiet little wins that nobody claps for, except you. So if you're listening to this and you're in that space where confidence feels miles away, please know this, that you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to start collecting those tiny pieces of evidence that you can trust yourself again. Because confidence isn't waiting for you at the finish line. It's built in every uncomfortable, uncertain step you take between here and there. And yes, there will be bad days. There will be setbacks. You'll question if you're moving at all. But with each small effort, every walk, every workout, every time you choose to try, it's a vote for the person you're becoming. So let's pause for a second. Wherever you are, walking, driving, cooking, just take a breath. Think about your own version of that 20-kilo squat. And what's the one thing you thought you'd never be able to do again? Or maybe have been too scared to start? And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be going for a walk or a run, booking that class, or simply saying, "I'm ready to try again." That moment when you take that first step, even if it shakes, even if it hurts a little, that's your comeback starting, and that's your confidence curve beginning to rise. Okay, so let's unpack what we've just talked about. Because everything we've covered so far, the setbacks, the small wins, the quiet comebacks, they all have something in common. They're built on proof. And confidence doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's built by collecting evidence that you're capable. That evidence might be physical, like lifting a weight, finishing a workout, or recovering from injury. Or it might be mental, like keeping a promise to yourself or choosing not to give up. Either way, confidence is a result of behavior, not belief. So let's look at the psychology of confidence. And there's a term in psychology called self-efficacy. And this is the foundation of real confidence. And self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to succeed at a specific task or challenge. But here's the key. That belief only grows when you take action. Think about it this way. Your brain is constantly gathering data on you. Every time you follow through on something you said you'd do, your brain files it away as proof. It gives you a tick that says, I did that. Another one that says, I can do hard things. And another that says, I can trust myself. And every time you don't follow through, it records that too. Now, this isn't about guilt or failure, it's about awareness. Because when you start to understand that confidence is built through repetition of success, even tiny successes, you realize you're not waiting for motivation anymore. You're training your brain to believe in you again. See, your brain loves progress, not perfection. Every time you complete a task, no matter how small, you get a hit of dopamine. That little chemical boost your brain is saying, hey, that felt good, do it again. And it's the same system that keeps elite athletes focused and everyday people moving forward, even when it's hard. And this is why small wins matter so much. When you start simple, hitting your steps, drinking more water, showing up for your workout even when you're not in the mood, you're teaching your brain that action equals reward. And over time, that becomes a loop. Action to reward, reward to belief, belief to more action. That's your confidence curve in motion. Now, this might surprise you, but big goals can actually damage confidence if they're all you're focused on. When we only measure success by massive milestones, like losing 10 kilos or running a marathon or completely transforming your body, we're setting ourselves up for frustration because those goals take time. And in the middle, progress feels invisible. But when you start noticing and celebrating those micro progresses, it's like choosing the better meal, doing one more rep, getting an extra hour of sleep. You feed your motivation in real time. And you stop chasing confidence as a feeling and start building it as a practice. Now, if you've ever watched elite athletes, they've mastered this. They don't just rely on motivation, they rely on the structure. Their confidence comes from consistent feedback. Every training session has metrics. Every rep, every lap, every lift, it's all data. And that data reinforces belief. And it's why Lewis Hamilton doesn't lose confidence after a bad lap. He reviews, he adjusts, and gets back out there. Because his brain knows, I've done the work, I have the evidence. And that's the same mindset you can apply to your own fitness journey, even if your racetrack is your living room, your gym, or your local park. Every time you move your body, you're building your evidence file. And every action you take adds another piece of proof to your confidence curve. So how do we build this confidence curve for ourselves? And here's where I want you to start. Step 1. Start smaller than you think you should. Confidence builds faster when success feels achievable. So don't try to overhaul your entire lifestyle overnight. Just pick 1 or 2 things you can definitely follow through on. Something so simple you almost laugh. That's your first brick. Step 2. Track your wins. I don't mean obsessively, just write them down. Because when you see proof on paper, it sticks. Step 3. Revisit your evidence on hard days. Confidence dips are normal, but when you can remind yourself of how far you've come, when you can see the notes, the photos, the milestones, you give your brain a reason to keep believing. So let's do a mini reflection together. Let's think about the one thing you did recently that you nearly didn't do. Something you've talked yourself into. A workout, a walk, a better meal choice. Got it? Now remind yourself you could have skipped it, but you didn't. And that's evidence, that's self-trust, and that's your confidence curve getting steeper. And this isn't just about fitness, it's about life. When you start trusting yourself in the gym or during training, that confidence bleeds into everything else. You'll speak up more, you'll hold yourself taller. You start to see that the person you thought you used to be never actually left. They were just waiting for you to believe in them again. And that, to me, is the real power of fitness. Yes, it changes your body, but more importantly, it reminds you of who you are. So, if you take one thing away from this episode, let it be this: that confidence isn't something you find, it's something you build. And every time you take action, you're laying another brick on that foundation. You don't need perfect form, a perfect plan, or a perfect mindset. You just need to start. Because that's how every comeback begins, with one imperfect, powerful, brave step forward. Thank you so much for listening to the Fundamentals of Fitness. If this episode has helped you or made you think differently about your journey, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And make sure you follow the show so you don't miss the next one. And if you're ready to build your own confidence curve, come join me over at abperformance.training. You'll find resources, coaching, and a community that's built on real progress, not perfection. Until next time, keep showing up, keep leveling up, and remember that confidence isn't born, it's built. One rep, one choice, and one step at a time.